Ottawa is our nation's capital, yes, but it's also affectionately referred to as the city that fun forgot. Maybe to try to chip away at that reputation, the city recently decided to appoint a nightlife commissioner. It's part of a wider recognition by cities in Canada and beyond that after the 9-to-5 economy winds down, plenty of businesses are still going strong or even just starting their day. And post-pandemic, they too could use some economic development help. Let's find out more. We're joined in Vancouver, British Columbia by Nate Sabine. He is chair of the board of the Hospitality Vancouver Association and director of business development at Blueprint. That's an entertainment and hospitality company. On Manhattan Island in New York City, Ariel Palitz, former nightlife mayor of New York. And in our nation's capital, Emmanuel Rey, economic development officer for the City of Ottawa. And we're delighted to welcome the three of you onto TVO tonight for a conversation that I suspect a lot of people really know very little about. So, Emmanuel, let's just start with something very basic. When you talk about the nighttime economy, what are you talking about?
Absolutely. So the nighttime economy, we're looking at the hours between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. So that transition from the daytime economy to the nighttime economy. Specifically for the City of Ottawa, we've looked at the nightlife economy, which is a subsector of the nighttime economy. So that's what the City of Ottawa is focused on, nightlife, and I'll be pleased to expand on that a little bit more as needed.
Do it right now if you wouldn't mind. You're
Sure.
creating a nightmare, M-A-Y-O-R, not a nightmare, which is a different thing, but you're creating this nightlife commissioner. What do you want the commissioner to do?
So the commissioner's that individual's role will really be to connect with residents, connects with businesses that support the nightlife economy, and really be that voice that is in between the elected officials, working with the city, working with city departments, but really doing what they can to support the nightlife economy. So they'll be spurring conversations. They'll be working on a number of initiatives to support the nightlife economy, and we're getting started on that right away. That's the first order of business is to identify and find this nightlife commissioner.
Okay,
City of Ottawa.
We're going to give you lots of free advice here on TVO tonight because we happen to have somebody with us who's actually had the job. Ariel, you were New York City's first ever night mayor, if I can call it that. How did you get the job in the first place?
Well, we like to call it nightlife mayor to help resolve any confusion with that. I grew up in New York City. I was born and raised, going out mostly. I owned my own nightclub for 10 years. I served on my local community board on the liquor licensing committee for 7. And actually, while I owned my nightclub, I was the #1 most complained about bar in New York from one chronic caller, which really sort of activated me and politicized me to not only defend myself, but really the ways in which operators were identified and treated as they interact with the city.
So how did you, presumably you put yourself in a position to get this gig from the city. Why did the city want to give you the job to begin with?
Well, a lot of people wanted the job. It's an important job. A lot of people misunderstand what it might mean. It's not about going out every night, as was previously identified. It's really about being a convener and finding non-enforcement and creative solutions to help resolve the issues that really affect the entire ecosystem of not only nightlife, but life at night. So you're dealing with owners and workers and operators, as well as residents and patrons. And I think most importantly, historically, nightlife has not necessarily been an appreciated industry or culture or economy. It has been really truly criminalized, overly restricted, enforced upon. And I think now we see a global nightlife movement where even 5 years ago when I was appointed, it was really just the beginning. The first was in Amsterdam. And now there's almost 80 offices of nightlife around the world that recognize that the nighttime economy and culture are essential to our economic, cultural, and personal well-being. And the COVID-19 pandemic really demonstrated what a life would be like without a nightlife industry. And so these offices really are there to help reframe a historically framed industry, convene and be a liaison for the industry and all its components to the city and elected officials.
Nate, why don't you pick up on that and tell us how you see the mission of the Vancouver Office for Nighttime Economy?
Yeah, it's almost exactly what Ariel said. It's in Vancouver, especially if Ottawa is referred to as a city that fun forgot. Vancouver was called No Fun City for 10, 15 years. And some people still call it that. I've been saying for a long time that if you're calling Vancouver No Fun City still, you're not trying very hard. Because things have gotten a lot better here. But our sort of march toward this office started, I think, in 2017 when the then city council and mayor elected to, put forth a motion to do a late night lockout, which would mean that after a certain point in the night, we wouldn't be allowed any new patrons into the bars and clubs in our entertainment district or anywhere else in the city, which had devastating consequences in King's Cross, especially in Australia, if you want to use that for sort of a test case of what a moronic idea that was. Anyway, so this led us to finding Mirik Milan, who, as Ariel pointed out, was the first night mayor ever in Amsterdam. And we flew him over twice to speak to City Council, to speak to the Board of Trade, the Downtown Vancouver Business Improvement Association, the community, and started getting this idea out that this is the way to go. So, it's been a while, and the then mayor, and now we're on the third mayor who has had this in a platform or as a priority, and a lot of it, I think we would already be there were it not for the pandemic. But we are just finishing up a report for City Council, which will then hopefully, catalyze the rest of getting this office together. But it's everything that Emmanuel and Ariel already spoke about. It is about advocacy. It is about building a bridge. It is about understanding the needs. It is about tourism, filling hotel rooms, and it is about culture. At the end of the day, we believe in culture through commerce, if you will. The ecosystem, nothing happens in a vacuum. Everything happens together. And I think that it's an idea whose time has come.
Okay, let me follow up with Ariel on something, because I can imagine that if the nighttime mayor and the real mayor of the five boroughs are not on the same page, that there could be some stickiness. So when you got appointed, who was the actual mayor of New York City?
I was appointed by Mayor de Blasio, and I was able to stay on through the new administration with Eric Adams. Both mayors understood the importance of the economy at night, the culture at night, that New York is the city that never sleeps. But really, no matter what city you're in around the world, life is 24 hours. The idea that it's somehow divided into day and night. And I mean, people live 24 hours a day. Even if you say, I don't go out at night, you do. You go out to restaurants, you have a drink after work. And so it is obviously extremely important to have a mayor who understands that the city is a 24-hour entity and that it is something that is worthy and deserving of support and resources and respect, and to see the nighttime businesses as essential and to see them as partners in not only developing the economy, but safety and quality of life. Again, historically, this has been an adversarial relationship. Stigmas around nightlife help to prevent that sort of more productive relationship with government. But I think those days are really, thankfully, far behind us, and the industry is being respected, and these offices are being created in order to develop those partnerships, resources, and support.
Got it. Emmanuel, I want to get you back in here in as much as we just heard Nate describe how too many people, in his view, still regard Vancouver. And, if they say it about Vancouver as the place where you go for no fun, they say it doubly as much about your city, the capital city of the whole country. It's a one-industry town, and if you're not in that industry, which is politics, forget it. So, but let me hear it from you. How would you characterize Ottawa, Ontario, Canada right now?
Well, Ottawa is an amazing city, and if anyone hasn't been here, in the last couple of years, and certainly during the pandemic, we understand tourism slowed down, but we're having a busy here in Ottawa. Nightlife here is amazing. It's something that, and it's certainly been that case for quite some time. The number of events that I attempted to go to recently, they're sold out for nighttime events. So, and these are large, cultural types of events. Where people are getting together, so it's certainly it's an old adage, and it's time to move beyond that verbiage, and really celebrate. We're a world-class, multicultural, very diverse city, and the nightlife economy is really an opportunity to celebrate that and to bring people together. The cultural aspects, the arts aspect, the recreational aspect, the entertainment aspect. There's certainly a lot of components that are thriving here in Ottawa, and certainly our role and with this nightlife commissioner's office is to really support that part of the economy. It's vital to our city. It's vital for talent attraction. It's critical, obviously, for people living and working here in the city.
Well, Nate, if some cities have a snoozy reputation, it's often because the people who live there like it that way. They're not thrilled with the idea of nightclubs being open maybe close to their neighborhoods until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning with lots of noise and all of the other stuff that comes along with that. So what would you say to people who think, I don't want my city to be too exciting late at night, and I'm very content, thank you very much, with it being kind of bland?
I would say I'm going to paraphrase or sort of reuse Fran Leiboviz's recent series, and pretend it's a city. You need to understand that Vancouver, whether you like it or not, is an internationally renowned city, and we have visitors from all over the world all times of year, and it's only growing, as is the populace. So it's been really interesting here because we have areas that have built up around hospitality and nightlife venues that have been there. At Blueprint, we own a building that's been there for 100 and something years, and it's always been a dance hall, a nightclub, you name it, since for the entire time. We have a plaque on the front of the building, and a developer puts up a building behind there, and the residents start complaining. There should be a tacit understanding of what you're moving into and where you're living, and this in the entire history of Vancouver has been nightlife and culture and events capitulating to a few complaints from a few residents. And that's not to say that things are always perfect, but they're definitely weighted heavily on one side, and it's not on ours. Everything from the noise bylaws, we make music now differently with technology, with the current sounds. Music is made differently than it was when these bylaws were put into place and these noise restrictions, and they just don't work. So it's very simple things like that, and to me it's a matter of thinking about somebody other than yourself. If I can understand not wanting to be kept up till 5 a.m, but if that's happening, then you probably moved into an entertainment district, and maybe you should live somewhere else. The other is thinking about the health of the city and the community. We sacrifice things every day, things that you don't even think about. I think sacrificing for a little bit of culture, a little bit of tourism for the health of the city is a reasonable ask.
Okay, Ariel, I would like you, let me put it this way. Everybody understands that nightlife includes things like in New York City, it's Broadway, it's restaurants, it's theater, it's all of that stuff you traditionally think of. But of course, it's also bartenders and waitresses and cleaners and a lot of people who do kind of tough jobs overnight so that the city looks great the next day when people are going into their offices. So how does your office serve those folks?
Well, the Office, again, of Nightlife really is meant to serve the entire ecosystem of life at night in order to ensure that it is healthy and operating and supported. That includes workers as well, of course. And the way the Office of Nightlife is able to support them is, first of all, to amplify their needs and to make sure that they are aware of their resources and their rights, to understand their labor laws. We also created the Elevate Nightlife Mental Health and Physical Well-Being program, which working at night is extremely stressful. It's got a lot of challenges, and so it was important for our office, while I was the director, to put an emphasis on making sure that they were aware of what their resources were, that were free, sliding scale, not only for mental health, physical health, as well as spiritual well-being. But I think just to also be able to touch upon the patrons and their role in this, we know that most enforcement against nightlife venues is complaint driven, and it tends to be that one person, a chronic caller. But now, unlike before, we have anonymous automated complaint systems that don't properly communicate to the venue operators what the issues are. They tend to side on the resident side, but at the end of the day, if there's not communication, there's not going to be resolution and improvement of quality of life. Enforcement and having a police officer showing up at 3 o'clock in the morning and telling your bar back to turn it down is not sufficient in order to improve not only the conditions, but the relationship. And so the Office of Nightlife in New York created MEND NYC. It stands for Mediating Establishment Neighborhood Disputes, a non-enforcement solution that not only helps the resident, but the venue, but elected officials who receive complaints, the police department who has minimal resources to actually be able to use it towards actual crime. You shouldn't be using police officers to tell a venue to turn it down. And so this mediation program helps them to know, is it in the front or is it in the back? Is it the volume? Is it the bass? Is it voices? And it creates a mutually respectful condition to speak during the day and to find resolutions and to get it out of the complaint system and to minimize enforcement and improve quality of life. And so finding non-enforcement creative solutions that are mutually beneficial for every party involved is really the way to go, and the role of the Office of Nightlife. And
well,
that includes for employees.
Sure. That takes me to Emmanuel next because, well, Emmanuel, I don't have to tell you, somebody from our neck of the woods just bought your favorite hockey team. And from what I understand, he wants to, or he is hopeful, and I heard Mayor Sutcliffe say this the other day, they're hopeful about a new arena in downtown Ottawa. Not necessarily LeBreton Flats, but further downtown. Now, I can only imagine, let's fast forward several years when perhaps this is all done, I can only imagine people who've lived in that part of Ottawa for years and years and did not expect to see 18,000 people coming into their neighborhoods every third or fourth night suddenly not being thrilled with the notion. So, as you look forward, how do you plan to balance the needs of local residents with the needs of the Ottawa Senators, with the needs of all of the people who are going to be making a living off the Senators coming further into the city, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, certainly this is happening across the country and across the globe. Is the downtowns are changing. There's a shift, obviously, from workers working from home more often, and downtown is in need of revitalization. Ottawa's Nightlife Economy Action Plan is focused on citywide changes to support the nightlife economy, but certainly downtown there's an opportunity, and we're certainly very excited to the senators are going to be moving downtown, and with a new ownership group, and part of their commitment is to build downtown. And as you mentioned, Mayor Sutcliffe is very supportive of that. He's also very supportive of nightlife, of growing our economy, and turning improving things in Ottawa when it comes to downtown. So I only see it as a positive. I think this will be a great opportunity. Residents moving downtown, and we need more residents moving downtown. You look at some of the vibrancy that happens in and around, for example, the Sky Dome, or the Rogers Centre in Toronto, and all the nightlife that happens around that area. Certainly, it'd be a welcome change for Ottawa to have that immediate access to something downtown. So, and part of that plan is to support the Canada community with that transition as well, because there's obviously a great asset, in Canada where the senators currently play, and part of the plan has to be able to look at that side as well.
Sure. Nate, tell me this. What happens when the nighttime commissioner or the nighttime mayor has an idea that would be helpful to the nighttime economy of, for example, Vancouver, but the actual elected mayor of Vancouver doesn't think it's a good idea? How do they resolve that issue?
That's a great question. I wish I could get back to you in a year or so after this thing is up and running. But I think it would probably be, and we're especially lucky because our current mayor his motto, or one of his mottos, is that Vancouver is open for business. So I think that if it's safe, and if it makes fiscal sense, and if it's good for culture, it will win with this mayor and council at least. And to be perfectly frank, the staff at City Hall, everybody seems to be singing from the same songbook for the first time since I've been around, which is quite a while. So I think the mayor, to answer your question in brief, I think the mayor is going to win, and he's going to, because he's the actual mayor. But I think that it's going to be in Vancouver for hopefully a long time. It's going to be the best idea wins, gets pushed forward, and we go from there.
Ariel, how long did you have the job for, and why did you eventually leave it?
Well, our office was created legislatively and is written into law, regardless of who the mayor is, thankfully. And I think any mayor will understand that their cities are 24 hours, and that proactive rather than reactive management is key in order to be able to improve the conditions everyone's been complaining about for decades. I just want to say that. I had the job for 5 years as the first to help build the infrastructure and foundation and identify the priorities, and navigated it through the pandemic and 2 mayors. And I think it's really important to know that the first person, yes, is important to help define those things, but you don't want to have founder syndrome. This is not supposed to be based on my personality or my connections and my abilities. The fact that it's codified into law demonstrates it's essential to the city, and it's essential for it to go on for generations to come and many mayors to come. And I felt a responsibility to make sure that I helped to deliver that to the next director, which New York is still in the process of, and then also to be able to continue my personal work to help other cities around the world to establish their offices, as well as to continue to advocate and advise the industry locally.
I hope you won't find this too chippy a question, but given the 5 years that you had the job, international pandemic, 2 different mayors, New Yorkers' famous passivity and gentleness and always getting along with each other as part, no doubt, of all of the people you've done. How did you keep your sanity, Ariel, is what I guess I'm trying to ask.
Well, I mean, it was an extraordinary opportunity, a gift to be able to love an industry so much, to be able to know how it's been mistreated and how to support it, and to be given the opportunity to fix it. I mean, what better opportunity? It really gave me life rather than took it away, to be honest. To really be able to support businesses, improve quality of life, deal with harm reduction and equity and accessibility, and to do it on a citywide level that's impacting also and influencing the world. It was, the best job in the world. And I think it's important that the movement continues, and I'll do everything in my power to help support it from this moment on.
Lovely. In our last minute here, Emmanuel, let me give it to you. And that is, you can imagine how difficult a job it is for the New York nightlife mayor to be seen to be fair when you've got such wide varieties in New York as Manhattan Island and Staten Island. Those are two pretty different places. And you're going to have the same problem, right? I mean, downtown Ottawa is pretty different from Canada. You've already talked about that. How do you do the job fairly going forward?
Well, as I mentioned, the City of Ottawa's nightlife economy action plan is really focused on as a citywide strategy. So it's not going to single out one specific area. We know that certain parts of the city are more popular for different demographics, and we'll look at supporting those areas as well. But it's both the urban and the outer urban areas. Taking a look at how we can support businesses and look at the broader economy. Nightlife is a subsection of the broader economy. We're working on supporting the broader economy as well, and cultural supports, and supporting small businesses and entrepreneurs, and the nightlife economy is really kind of a combination of those aspects. So certainly nightlife, it's approximately $1.5 billion spent here within the city, and that will only grow as our city grows. And we're looking forward to welcoming newcomers and immigrants, and they add to that vibrancy that's part of Ottawa. So we're looking forward to that.
Okay, Ariel, there are a lot of people who, when they think of nightlife, they think of drugs, they think of prostitution, they think of other undesirable stuff happening on the streets that they don't want any part of. How do you deal with all of that?
It's a fair question. I think a lot of that insinuation is a huge part of the stigma that has been placed upon life at night. We know that drugs, prostitution, shootings, all the sort of unsavory elements of life can happen anywhere, anytime, in any industry. The life at night is equally essential, important, and can be equally as safe with proactive management that understands the condition, organizing city services like police, fire, health department, like you would any large festival or event that happens quite seamlessly in every city. There has been a history of misunderstanding and misdefining this industry. What we learned during the pandemic is that cities can't live without it. People can't live without it. Depression, suicide, relapse of addiction were all due to not having nightlife, not because it was there. And so the purpose of having offices of nightlife is being able to understand the asset and the value, to understand the misunderstandings and stigma that has led to over enforcement and restriction and a lack of city planning that creates unsafe conditions. It's only through partnership with Life at Night and operators that we can create safer and more vibrant cities.
Nate, what would you add to that?
Oh, she said it so beautifully, but the same sort of thing. I think that all of when you asked the question, it reminded me of my image of New York City in the 1970s. I don't know that it even applies anymore in so many instances, but I think that harm reduction in Vancouver, we have a massive safe supply problem. So there is on the downtown east side, there's a huge problem, and it's been growing for years and years with safe supply, especially with fentanyl. And some of that, and fentanyl especially, has crept into mainstream drugs. And that's a really, really scary thing, because it's a fact of life. Drugs, sex work, all of those sorts of things, that's everyday people. It shouldn't be stigmatized. So I think that changing the understanding is the first thing, and making if you want to talk about both of those industries, if you will, or both of those activities, safe for the people involved, the people that choose to do those things, or the people that are doing those things out of a circumstance of life, it needs to be safe, because shame doesn't work. Those things happen at every level of society. We know this, and attaching it to nightlife, I think, is it's cheap. I think it's not reality. Yeah, it needs to be managed properly, but it's not one of the massive issues that we're dealing with necessarily.
I want to thank Nate Sabine in Vancouver and Emmanuel Rey in Ottawa and Ariel Palitz on Manhattan Island in New York City for joining us on TVO tonight and telling us all about the new Nightmare. Okay, Nighttime Mare, I guess that's a better title. Coming your way in Ottawa and Vancouver, and thanks for the experience, Ariel. Good to have you all on board.
Okay.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.